right, well, if you will open your Bibles to 1 Peter 5, we're going to do a lot of interaction tonight, and so I hope you like the people you're sitting with. If not, now's the time to move. Just say you have to use the restroom, then choose a different table. So we're going to read all of 1 Peter chapter 5 just with our tables. And so designate a reader, and we're going to do this out loud, obviously, at each table. And I would say, read at a decent pace. We don't want to take like 10 minutes to read these 14 verses. But go ahead and do that, and then I'll regather us, and we'll start with our study. All right. Well done. Is everyone there? Perfect. All right, little known fact, verse 14 is actually Andy's life verse. Greet one another with a kiss of love. Andy would totally appreciate a kiss of love as you are on your way out this evening. So there you go. All right, just for fun, why don't we just open it up for either something that stands out to you that you found very impactful, meaningful, or something that is a little bit confusing. Either one. So let's hear from every table. So we'll just start right here. What stood out to this fine table right here? Our quartet, we'll call you guys.
If God goes before us, it makes a way. And if we follow him, we receive a crown of glory.
Nice. Yes, God makes a way for us, and he promises a crown of glory. That fadeth not away. Yes. So if you look at, that is verse, where is that? 4. Fun fact about the crown that will never fade. The word for never fade is actually the word amaranth, and it's a flower that was red, and it was sort of a colloquial way of saying something that doesn't fade. So it's talking about a flower there. That's just a fun trivia fact. All right, second table, question or observation?
God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Amen.
Yeah, and why does that stand out to you?
Because a lot of times we like to brag about ourselves, or other people like to brag about themselves. And you don't want to hear it. You just don't want to hear it, okay?
Yeah.
This is a good verse to use.
Yeah, and it's really hard to live humbly today, because we live in a world where you can promote yourself and your opinion online and in a lot of other ways. And so even if no one in this room uses TikTok or Instagram, some of you probably use Facebook, maybe some other platforms, but even just in conversations, it's one thing you can count on is everyone loves to talk about themselves. That's one topic everyone is into. And so you're right. Humility is rare. Okay. Back table. So this is our largest table. So that means you got to carry some weight. Yeah, go for it.
I had a question. In verse 13, it says, she who is in Babylon, chosen together with you, sends you her greetings, and so does my son Mark.
Yeah.
So, who is she?
Great question. Yeah, there's two mysterious things there, right? And when I asked if anyone had questions, I was assuming and kind of hoping people would point to the end. But yeah, so let's see. She who is in Babylon, chosen together with you, sends you her greetings. So most scholars think the she there is referring to the church. Over in 2 John, I think it is. Let me double check here. 2 John refers to the church as a chosen lady, and sometimes that's how biblical authors will refer. I mean, the church is called the bride of Christ. Israel is often personified with female, pronouns. So, and then the Babylon. Anyone want to take a stab at that one? When it says, she who is in Babylon, chosen together with you, sends you her greetings. Now, Babylon is crumbled. It's an extinct civilization when Peter's writing this. And so, can't be actual Babylon. that Nebuchadnezzar ruled over in the Old Testament. So anyone want to take a guess? Or if you have a study Bible, you can cheat and look at that.
No, I'm ashamed. We talked about this week 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go for it.
I've heard it referred to as Jerusalem.
Okay, Jerusalem. Interesting. All right, anyone else?
Rome?
Yeah, that's the one that I see most often. Ultimately, we don't know, right? But yeah, Babylon was a common way of referring to Rome. And so, yeah, some scholars think that. It's really interesting. And part of that, too, is that if you remember how Peter opens his letter, he says, to God's elect, exiles scattered throughout the provinces. Babylon was where Israel was taken away from their homes and scattered into exile in the Old Testament. It's one of the places. And so that's another reason why we think, they refer to Rome as a Babylon. It's far from Jerusalem. It's away from, where they had come from. So fascinating stuff. Okay, front table. Questions or observations?
Question, why would they say Babylon, though? It wasn't populated at the time, right, like you said?
Yeah, we don't know. There's theories on why. Theories ranging from trying to maybe conceal, some of the things they're saying so that's not misinterpreted. So saying Babylon instead of Rome was safer in a Roman-ruled world. If you're writing about them in your letter, you just got to be careful with that. So some people think it's a safety measure. It could just be a popular saying of the day. I'm trying to think of a good example. Can anyone think of something we say today where we kind of use a different word for something?
When in Rome.
When in Rome means like wherever I'm at right now, I'm going to do this thing. So, it's kind of one of those things. Just tucked away there at the end. Okay, those were great. So, I want to show us something real quickly. And what I want to show us is that, when you read chapter 5, you wouldn't initially think that this is talking about the end times. There's not things in there that you would typically associate. There's no mention of a beast or Armageddon or any of those popular images that we would normally associate with the end times. And so, Andy, if you could throw up the slide, I want to show you that there's some words used in chapter 5 that Peter has been using throughout the whole letter. So we can start with verse 1. I'm going to kind of skip to where those underlined words are, but he says, who also will share in the glory to be revealed. And then I just have the Greek word in parentheses so you can see that it's the same word. Well, Peter already used that word in chapter 1. He says that it may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. So you see how he uses that word revealed to talk about the return of Jesus. All right, let's do another one. Okay, same word is used in 1 Peter 1:7 when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. So there it is again, and I think there's one more for this word. You got this, Andy? Oh, that's okay. Hey. Okay, this is a different one. So look in verse, you can just skip to the next one. That's good. That's okay. Look at verse 4 in this chapter. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory. That same word is used in chapter 1. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Next one. Okay, in verse 6 of this chapter, it says that he may lift you up in due time. And that word time, kairos, is used again in chapter 1. So we kind of have a bookend here. Chapter 1 and chapter 5. The first chapter and the last chapter use these words. God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. All right? And then is there one more, maybe? Be alert and of sober mind. Okay, that's in verse 8 of this chapter. We're going to go to Matthew, where Jesus uses the same word as he's talking about the end times. Go back, Andy. Oh, okay. Don't even worry about it. All right. So, yeah, Jesus uses that same word where he says, keep watch or be alert because you do not know on what day the Lord will come. Okay, now why did I show you all those words? Because when we think about the end times, we probably wouldn't think of 1 Peter chapter 5. We might go to Revelation. We might go to Matthew 24 and 25, which I know you've been through the book of Matthew, so you know that that's where Jesus talks about some end time stuff. You might go to Thessalonians. But 1 Peter 5, I don't know. And so, but here's what's so amazing. Because these words are tucked inside the chapter, and it's helping us see some things about the end times, we can actually learn how to prepare for them. What are we supposed to do in light of the end times? Okay, so I want to pose that question to each table, and then we're going to look at a little bit of what this passage says to answer that question. But Andy, if it will allow you to put it up. The question is simple. It's just, how should Christians today prepare for Jesus' return? What should we be doing to prepare for his return? All right, and you might even talk about what are some of the popular things you hear from other Christians or in Christian circles about how to prepare for the return of Jesus. All right, so go ahead and talk about that amongst yourselves. All right, let's bring it back. Okay, so how do we prepare for Jesus' return? Anybody can jump in. What would you say? How do we prepare?
We were just talking about being cemented, Jet said, in the Word of God through humility and casting all your cares upon Him. And the devil who walks about as a roaring lion, he can't eat cement, right? So if we're cemented in the Word of God,
Yeah.
we're going to have some trouble.
Yeah, so unity, right? Is that what you're saying? Be unified as the body of
No,
Christ?
I'm not saying that at all, actually. I'm talking about meditating upon the Word of God.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the individual and being
Yeah,
against the attacks of the
I gotcha.
which come also in the last time.
Yeah, so yeah, solidify your foundation in the Word so that the lion can't take bites out of you. I like that. It's really good. What else?
Be alert.
Be alert. Okay, good. You guys are cheating in the right sense of the term and using 1 Peter 5. But you're right. Yeah, be alert. And what does it mean to be alert, do you think? What does that look like?
Well, I believe that you have to be prepared, that you have to be mindful, that you have to be in the Word, you have to
Yeah.
sing praises to our Lord. Praise Him.
Yeah.
Awake and sober.
Awake and sober, yes. Yeah, that's great. Worship is always a wonderful answer. Yeah. What else? Anybody? Come on, big table. I know you have great wisdom. Yes.
In the mornings when I get up, most of the time I just think of ways that I can do acts of kindness
Yeah.
or do acts that will show my faith, and that way, when the time comes for it to happen, not that I know it's going to happen, but when the time comes, I'm not sitting there thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's more of a responsive nature.
Yeah. Great answers. Here's a simple overview of what I think the chapter says, which includes everything that's been said. But one more slide, Andy. How do we prepare? Live humbly and stand firm in the faith. Now, here's the crazy thing about the end times. A lot of what you will hear is that you need to stockpile your canned goods, and you need to, I don't know, just, sell everything you have and move across the world to serve the poor, or whatever it would look like. And some of those things are good. Maybe don't stockpile too many canned goods. But this is really good news because it's ordinary, everyday obedience. That's what 1 Peter 5 is telling us. How do we prepare? Well, we get all worked up and we think, well, I have to do all this stuff and I have to completely change everything about my life. And Peter says, no, you just need to live humbly and stand firm in the faith. And so let's just unpack both of those in the passage with our remaining time, and we'll see how far we can get. But yeah, with end time stuff, people tend to either freak out, like we were talking about, or tune out and just not even think about it. And so I think I resonate a little more with the second personally. Like I don't always know what to do with the idea of Jesus returning. What does that mean for me today? And so I was really helped as I was just thinking through this and studying this passage. Wow, live humbly and stand firm in my faith. I think I can try to do those things, imperfectly, of course, but with God's Spirit in me, I think I can actually try to do those things, and that's really good news. So humility has a lot of definitions in our world. What's really interesting is that we think of humility positively. Being a humble person is a compliment. It was actually a derogatory concept in the first century when this was written. Being humble, there was no category for that being a good thing. That was looked upon as what servants did. Remember, Peter doesn't want Jesus to wash his feet. It's like, never, Lord. That is not right. That humility would be insulting to you. And Jesus says, no, let me wash your feet. I have not come to be served, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. And so Jesus actually revolutionized the concept of humility, which, again, we were just talking about, proud people with a lot of bravado and arrogance and loudness. We don't like that. Well, that's because Jesus came to this earth and he showed a better way. In the first century, it was really the most powerful and the most impressive. And we see that still today, of course, that get the attention in life. But Jesus revolutionized it. But what does it really mean to be humble? What does it mean to be humble? Just think about that for a second. Well, some people say it means that you just get down on yourself all the time. Every time someone compliments you, you're like, oh, that's not true. No way. I reject that. Or you just say, no, it's all the Lord. Every single time. You can't say thank you for anything. Your self-esteem has to be really bad. Is that what humility is? No. Here's my favorite definition that comes from Tim Keller. He says, humility is not thinking more of myself, which we'd say, well, yeah, of course. But humility is also not thinking less of myself, being, derogatory. Humility is thinking of myself less. It's thinking of myself less often. It's not being the center of my universe. It's a life lived for the service of other people. So humility is not thinking more of myself. It's not thinking less of myself. It's thinking of myself less. I love that. And that's what we're going to see in this passage worked out in specific terms. So let's turn to the first, four verses. And he starts at the top, which I love. He's talking to a church. And so he mentions elders, and elders are, that sounds very, I don't know how that word hits you, but elders in Scripture are described in different ways. So they're called elders, which means that they govern the church and they oversee its affairs. They're called shepherds, which means that they gather people together and they care for them and they feed them with God's word. They're also called overseers, and they're supposed to protect the people and guide them in different ways. But all those three terms, so elder and overseer and shepherd, are just three different terms for the same role. So Danny is an overseer. He is a shepherd. He is an elder in biblical terms because he helps govern the church. He leads the church. And so, we see so much brokenness in church leadership today. It seems like almost every day there's another headline: a pastor embezzled money or cheated on their spouse or had a domineering, brutal leadership style that wounded people, that mistreated people. And we just see it again and again and again. And because we're connected to the world, we hear about every instance and it gets pushed to the forefront. That's really depressing and really hard. As a pastor, I can tell you, we all know that one of the first things that people ask you is, well, what do you do for work? And I always have this internal struggle where I'm like, oh, I'm a pastor. And then you just kind of look to see what the reaction will be, because a lot of people have heard things or experienced negative things from pastors. And that's why I love the passage that we're about to read, because Peter lays out a vision of the humble leadership of a pastor that is the standard, is God's vision for what pastors are. And so here's what we'll do. With your table, read those first 4 verses again. And I want you to just make a list. You can write it down or you can put it in your phone, but make a list of all of the qualities of an elder that you see. What does humility for a pastor look like? Peter's going to lay it out in some really helpful ways, okay? So let's take 5 minutes or so and do that. So first 4 verses, and list out the qualities of an elder. All right. I know I'm probably cutting you off. Sorry about that. But lots of great things in here to consider. And so who wants to start? What do we see kind of qualifications of elders? David, we'll start with you. You're front and center. He's like, what? Great. I know you have great thoughts.
Okay, what's the question?
Yeah, so what should the humility, just pick anything from those verses. What should a pastor be like?
Well, an example of how we should be, how we should live, and how we should worship, and everything else.
Yeah, good. Okay, great. So let's see, end of verse 3, it says, eager to serve, and then being examples to the flock. Being examples to the flock. Yep. Trustworthy? Okay, yeah. What else?
Not greedy for money.
Okay, not greedy for money. Yeah, so they're not in it to get rich, which most of us pastors laugh. It's like, yeah, we're not getting rich with this gig. But there are some that pull that off, and a lot of TV evangelists, for example. This is going to get dark, okay? So you've been warned. But, TV evangelists who essentially they will collect donations from vulnerable, sometimes gullible people who will give away their entire retirement fund and will be left with nothing so that he or she can fly in their private jet around the world and live in their mansions, plural. That reality exists in our world, and that might be the extreme end. But there's also, as pastors, even just thinking through how we spend money, how we use church credit cards. What are we justifying as we spend money, and why are we spending that money? One of my friends said something, who is also a pastor, really convicting. They had a guy stealing from their offering plate, and they caught him, and they confronted him. And as they were figuring out how to handle the situation, my friend heard or kind of sensed God say to him, yeah, but how much time do you spend on Facebook and social media when you're in the office? He's like, ouch. And so, but it's an important point. Not in it for the financial gain, but in it out of a genuine desire to serve and to do what God has called them to do. So that's a great one. Okay, what else?
We were talking about the word partaker, because he's a partaker in the glory of God. So as a partaker, you have to, so he's partaking in that, so he has to be discipling, he has to be, spreading the word.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. It's interesting he mentions, because he gets back to the glory later, but it's almost like he's saying, look, elders, you have this amazing reward that God has promised you. Look forward to that. Be motivated by that. I mean, God is the treasure, not the reward. But Jesus does talk about rewards often, and Peter does it here, and we all are motivated by those things, right? It's like when we know the vacation's coming, we can kind of put our heads down and get done what we need to so that we get there. And that's kind of what we see here. He says, you will share in the glory to be revealed. So this is how you are to shepherd the people. Absolutely. Yeah.
First of all, they have to have the realization that God paid the price already.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they can be humble. That's
Yeah.
how they can do it, because they're not looking to say, I can do it. They're looking to say, he did it, and I want to serve him.
Yeah.
I want to be available. And I think unless that's why we're doing it, we shouldn't be doing it at all.
Yeah, well said. In verse, let me find it here. Yeah, in verse 12, the very end of the verse, he says, encouraging you and testifying that this is the true grace of God. Yep. And even in the verse that we were just talking about, as a witness of Christ's sufferings. So Peter's saying that exact thing. I have seen what he has done for me and for us. And because of that, yeah.
I could never do enough to repay him. So that makes you humble. You think it's done. He did it for
Yeah.
me.
Absolutely. That's great. That's a really good point. Yeah, we don't obey to get grace, but because we've received grace, we can then obey. It's always grace before law, and we're always reversing that order as humans. Yes?
Examples to the flock. And I look at you, and I look at Danny, and I look at Andy. All good examples, But there's also examples in Millie, and Chet, and all the people older than me. So I think the pastors need to and really learn from them.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. I could not imagine pastoring without, I'm picturing specific people in my church who bolster my faith, increase my faith, spark my faith. And so it says in verse 5, in the same way you who are younger, submit yourself to your elders. But then it says, all of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud and shows favor to the humble. Part of a pastor's humility is exactly what you're saying, is learning from others and regularly reminding the church in word and deed and in posture that we are just human beings like everyone else. And we don't have to remind people as much of that these days, because the role of pastor is less revered and more, people are more skeptical, if anything, uncomfortable around pastors. There was a time, I think, in American history where pastors were esteemed as, contributors to their community. But yeah, today it's a little harder going, but certainly there has to be humility both ways. It's kind of a mutual submission. I heard one pastor describing this as an orchestra. In other words, We all have our part to play in the life of the church. But the moment that one person decides, well, I have my sheet music and I know what I'm supposed to play, but I'm just going to play whatever the heck I want. And what if everyone in the orchestra did that? Imagine how horrible it would sound. But it's when everyone says, okay, we're going to follow the conductor, we're going to submit to him, and we're going to play when he says, and we're going to play what he says, that things work. And there's two dimensions to that. There's the element of the people following their pastors, but there's an even greater sense in which the entire church is following the chief shepherd. Did you catch that? How it says in verse 4, and when the chief shepherd appears, in other words, this church is not Danny's and Andy's. Southland Santa Ana is not my church or John, who I co-pastor with. It's not our church. It's Jesus's. In fact, you can see this in verse 2 as well. It says, be shepherds of God's flock. Pastors don't own the church. We don't run the show. We've been, asked to steward certain responsibilities, but the church is his bride, and so we will have to give an account, which is a terrifying thing in some ways. Thank goodness for his grace, going back to your point. But the chief shepherd is the one who owns the church. It belongs to him. Yeah. Any questions, thoughts? Okay. I'm just looking through. We hit on some of these. I like this three-word kind of alliteration. So what should the humility of pastors look like? Pressure, prosperity, and power. I think those are good kind of summaries. So pressure, prosperity, and power. So the first one, pressure. Peter says pastors should not be forced, or elders should not be forced into their role, dragging their feet like, okay, I guess I have the skill set, there's no one else to do it, so I'm just going to begrudgingly do this. He says, no, don't lead that way, but because you are willing, because God has put a desire in you to lead his church, so don't just lead out of pressure. The second is prosperity, and we talked about that. Don't do it for money or dishonest gain, but be eager to serve. So there we see that again, that eagerness, that joy, delight to serve. And then, side note, I don't think you can survive as a pastor if you're not eager to do it. There's going to be a lot that's going to deflate your enthusiasm, a lot of hard things. So if you're already kind of dragging your feet, you're probably not going to stay in it for long. And then the last one is power. And my goodness, this will preach in today's world where people are very skeptical about any authority figure, but especially religious authority figures. The number of documentaries out right now about, the horrors of religious leaders and the damage they have inflicted. You just see it everywhere in our culture. So let's hear what the Word of God says to those dark and disturbing situations. So it says in verse 3, eager to serve, not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. Yeah, Jesus even uses this kind of language where he says, if you look at Roman soldiers and Gentile rulers and kings, they crush those under them by their power and their will. You think of Pharaoh in Exodus, who's sort of the archetype of evil ruler who just crushes his subjects, cares only about the bottom line and his own interests and nothing else. And so then there's Jesus, and he says, do not, to his disciples, do not rule like that, but I want you to be servants. The first will be last, the last will be first. If you want to be great, then become a servant. If you want to be like me, then drop to your knees and start washing feet. That was the message that Jesus taught. And so not to lord power over others. And so yeah, I think, we just mourn all of the instances where that is not the case, and where humans in churches do what humans often do, and that is to exploit and to take advantage of the positions that they've been given. But that has nothing to do with Scripture. That flies in the face of the Word of God. And if you ever want to just read about Jesus' thoughts on this, about people who claim his authority but then mistreat the sheep, you can go to two places. Matthew 23 is one of the best. Matthew 23 is where Jesus calls the Pharisees hypocrites and snakes. He says, every convert you make, you turn into twice the son of hell that you all are. I mean, he just lays it out. And then the other one is Ezekiel 24, I think it is. Ezekiel 24. And that's where, same idea, but in the Old Testament, God says, you shepherds, you leaders of Israel, you are supposed to feed the people. You're supposed to protect them and care for them. But instead, you get fat while you starve the sheep. You mistreat them. Then Jesus says in John, the hired hand cares nothing for the sheep. As soon as it gets hard, as soon as there's danger or discomfort, he just runs away. And that's the kind of leadership that over and over in the Bible, God just says, no. Those are not the shepherds that are following the good shepherd. Those are not my sons who are following the Son. It's a distortion of my heart. And so, man, what a beautiful thing. None of us probably get really excited when we think about church government or polity. Like, oh, let's dive into that topic. But do you see how beautiful it really is? That, we don't like, why do there have to be elders and pastors and, people ruling over us, and why do there just have to be authority structures? We're all just the same. And God says, no, I've actually put leaders in place, and they are over you, and I want you to submit to them, but they are meant to serve their guts out, and they are meant to love you and serve you with everything they have, with all the strength that I give them. And if that wasn't in place, then we would just be our default. You realize, of course we all realize, our default clothing that we wear is pride and selfishness. And that's why Peter has to say specifically, clothe yourselves with humility in verse 5. It's actually something we put on. It's something that God helps us put on, but it is not natural. And so I think that's really beautiful. Okay. Time flies in here, doesn't it? Okay, let's see. The unfading crown of glory. So here's again the promise to elders in verse 4. And when the chief shepherd, Jesus, appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. People spend their lives working and slaving, building their reputations, building their platforms, getting noticed in all of those accomplishments. This is not an overstatement. We'll literally just get tossed like trash on the ash heap of human history. No one will remember any of it. But look at God's promise. He says, you will receive a crown of glory that will never fade away. In other words, we have to sacrifice to varying degrees now to follow Jesus and to make ourselves decrease while he increases. But look at the reward. It will never fade. Or we can fall prey to the way of the world and the way of our flesh, which says, no, get the recognition now. Go after it now. Instant gratification. Get the quick fix because it feels great. But all of that's just going to pass away. And so Jesus says, those who flaunt their righteousness, they already have received their reward in full. There's nothing else for them. They've already got it. So that's a beautiful promise that we can hold on to. Okay, so that's the humility piece. So much more that could be said. But let's turn to the second section, which is to stand firm in the faith. Has that been an idea that you've talked much about in this letter? Uh-oh, Andy. Not so much?
Ask your question.
Yeah.
No, you ask the question.
Oh, ask the question again? Yeah, just the idea of 1 Peter being about, standing firm in the faith and persevering and keeping at it. Has that been a theme that you've noticed so far?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think in chapter 5, you can see it in a couple places. So if you go all the way to the end of the chapter and to verse 12, with the help of Silas, I regard as a faithful brother, I've written to you briefly, encouraging you and testifying that this is the true grace of God. Stand fast in it. At the beginning and end of letters, you often get little glimpses of like the heart of the letter. What is it about? So there, it's stand fast in the grace of God. And then the other place that we can see it is in verse 9, which is the section on Satan. It says, resist him standing firm in the faith. And so kind of everything within this section, I think, falls within that idea of how do we stand firm in the faith. There's a lot of things today causing people's faith to crumble. What are some of those things? Well, as you talk to friends, or maybe you have grandkids, kids, neighbors, what do you see destroying people's faith today?
Stand.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's like when we talk about standing in the faith, picture a lion standing in front of you. It's terrifying. And you want to move. You want to back up. You want to flee. But I love what it says, right? Resist him and he will flee. Yeah. But I think it's helpful to know those areas where you are tempted to run. And then to equip yourself with the truth of Scripture and arm yourself with that reality. He will flee, but he's a really good intimidator. And so when you get those shaky knees, and we all do, whatever it is, there's going to be this moment for all of us, many moments, when we wonder, is it really worth it? Am I willing to take the hit to my reputation? Or even though I can't see through to the future and how this is going to resolve, or if it is, just trusting that God really is good and, resisting him. You were bringing in some Ephesians 6, armor of God. That's where we really learned some nitty-gritty of what it looks like to resist him. Here, Peter just gives us the shorthand, resist him, and he will flee.
I think the other thing about faith is
Yeah.
having the testimony of others
Mm-hmm.
is such a huge lift to your
Yeah.
own personal faith. And it says as much. It says knowing that the same suffering, it talks about resisting and standing steadfast, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. It's like you're not alone, right? When
Yeah.
you are isolated, faith is really hard to have when you're by yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you have the encouragement of the brethren and your brothers and sisters in Christ telling you to remember that God is with you, you know what I mean? And what he
Yeah.
did for me, he can do for you. That is a huge blessing to have that.
Yeah. Amen. It's really good. And whoever was talking, I think you were saying isolation is one of his main tactics. Because if he can separate you from the herd, you become much weaker. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I think it's interesting, I think verse 8 starts off with be self-controlled and alert, because I think it's also a warning that sometimes we don't recognize the devil. We don't recognize, if you're not in the Word and you're not in prayer, you're not in fellowship and worship
Yeah.
and all of that,
That's a great connection. I also love that, with our time constraints, it's hard to, I feel like if I'm hitting every single verse, it becomes mechanical. Like, we just have to do everything. But you guys are drawing out some of the things, that we haven't talked about yet. And I love that because really part of my role is just facilitating. We're all coming to God's word and asking his Spirit to illuminate it and draw things out. And so on that point specifically, be sober and self-controlled because we don't always recognize the threat that is there. You're totally right. And I think this works two different ways, kind of like with the end time stuff. You either freak out or you tune out. Some people don't even believe in the devil. They think that's silly and crazy. And so, of course, they're not aware. Others, though, almost become obsessive. And they think that every bad thing could be him. And I think Satan even uses that. He's like, yeah, worry about the flickering lights and go get some holy water thrown on you because what I'm really doing in your life is through your sin. And I have a great quote here that I think this is probably the primary way that we're oblivious to his work. So this comes from, I think there's a slide for it. William Gurnall is the author. The Christian in Complete Armor. Has anyone read that? Awesome. No way. That's so cool. Okay, so here's what he says. Do we got it? No? All right, that's all right. If men hear a noise at night, they cry, the devil, and they run for their life. But they carry the devil around in their hearts all day. For if you have a proud spirit, or if you have resentment, or you have anxiety, you are under his power. He is setting you in a precarious place. My friends, why don't you run from your pride, crying, the devil, the devil? Why don't you run from your resentment and your grudges, yelling, the devil, the devil? Run from them in terror. It's an interesting thought. Scripture says that anger gives the devil a foothold. It invites him into your life. And so sometimes we're looking for the roaring lion in a number of ways, but we're harboring a grudge, some other sin habit, and a good analogy that I've heard is where you leave trash lying around, the rats will come. The demonic are drawn to an environment where they can feed. And so, yeah, Satan would love to freak you out about all of the crazy exorcisms and, things that you should be afraid of in the dark, but have you ignore the stuff in your heart. So I think there's a wise word there. And in Peter's words, be sober, be alert, and be self-controlled. And so the more that we invite the light of Christ to just shine into our lives. Yeah. Go ahead.
In that same verse where it says that the devil is looking for someone to devour.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to devouring can come in a lot of different ways, and pretty much like that. It's like, for greed, for envy, and those things. And those things do nothing but grow.
Yeah.
So those are the things that, you see it coming, try and get on top of it and
Yeah.
resolve as quickly as possible. And it grows volume.
It's really good. Yeah, so the last thing you said, as quickly as possible. That's biblical, right? Do not let the sun go down. We know life's complex. Some people don't want to reconcile, and you can't. You can't do it just when you want. But for your part, we can. Yeah. Some of the best advice that I've received from a friend was, he's also a pastor, and he was just saying, to be a happy person, a good husband, a good dad, just healthy in general, the moment something's bothering me, I take it to the person in gentleness, not rage, but I don't let it fester. And that's great. The devil would love you to hold on to it, and the lie he tells us is that anger, man, you are punishing that person in your mind, No, you're poisoning your own soul. You think you're consuming them with all this thoughts of revenge and how much you hate them. What you're actually doing is just destroying yourself. They don't even know about all the things you're thinking. They could care less. Some of the people that hurt us the most, even if we told them, they wouldn't care, if we're just being honest. So, man, the freedom we have in Christ to just release that. If we need to say something to them, we can. But man, Satan's just like, no, hold on to it, feed it, stew in it, live in it. Scripture warns us against the lion that will devour. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. We just have a couple minutes here. So let's keep reading. In verse 10 and 11, this is sort of the pinnacle of certainly the chapter, maybe even the book, I don't know. But here's what it says, verse 10 and 11. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. Beautiful, beautiful words. What stands out to you from that sort of benediction? The phrase that gives me hope is, after you have suffered a little while, which we know that for some people, that little while is their whole life, for whether physically or emotionally, whatever their situation might be. And my wife and I have a sort of a mantra that we say in our phase of life, because we have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then a new baby on the way. Andy will relate to this. Some days are just really chaotic and really tiring, and kids don't sleep, and then they wake up at 4 a.m., and then they're crabby all day. So we just say, this is a season. Not being able to enjoy vacations, it's a season. Not being able to go out at night is a season. And we just try to, because it feels like forever, and it just feels like our freedom is crushed, But one, we really love our kids, and so it's worth it. But also, it really is not going to last forever. And already we're seeing there's hope, Andy, okay? We're seeing some subtle changes where, we can go out, or we can do a half day, just me and my wife or whatever. But as I was reading this, I was just reminded of the scripture that says, a day to the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. And so this isn't, cheap, wishful thinking hope, it's just going to be a little bit. No, it could be years. But in the scope of eternity, and especially from God's perspective, and it'll be such a small window of time. It's a season. It's not going to last forever. And it's so, so hard for us to remember that when we're in the midst of it. But here it is. Whenever we need it, it says, after you've suffered a little while. I think it's powerful too. Who wrote this? Peter. And how does church history tell us that he died? So he lived these words. And when he says, hey, I'm a fellow elder, I'm suffering with you, and he lived that. When he talks about elders having integrity, he's the guy that denied Jesus. And this is really powerful. Do you remember when Jesus restores him with grace? He asks Peter 3 questions. Do you love me? And then he says, what? Feed my lambs, my flock. It's the same language. It's the shepherd theme. And he says, be a good shepherd like you've seen me for these past few years. And so it's just beautiful. You have all that shepherd imagery. Peter walked with the good shepherd, and now he's instructing other people how to do that. Then you have the themes of suffering And Peter himself suffered because of his own sin and the guilt that came from it. And physically, he was martyred. And then you have these beautiful themes of glory that's coming because of God's grace, and that all of the suffering is just momentary. And so, we like to hear from people who have lived it, Not people in the ivory tower who are just kind of preaching at us, but we want people who are like in the trenches, actually have gone through some stuff, know what they're talking about, and Peter's definitely that guy. And so what a gift that God has just given through these two letters. I'm excited for you all to go on to 2 Peter.
And don't you think that God puts those people in our path that have suffered and have been there? Whenever somebody comes in my path, I think, God, what is the reason? There's something reason that I'm connected with them, and He almost always has a reason.
Wow. Yeah, it might be good taking that thought to just think about what are some of the sufferings you've endured. Just think about that. And how might the Lord want to use your story to bless other people? You probably all have things that come to mind. For me, I lost my mom to cancer in 2007 when I was in college still. And really any time that someone, has a family member with cancer, we just lost a lady in our church to cancer, I immediately have a ministry that I can bring to them. And it might just be being quiet and sitting with them or talking about other things and having a coffee, or it could be crying with them or whatever it is. But we all have those things. And so just pray that, the Lord will really use those in your life and give you the strength, even our sin. I was just talking with someone very close to me who had an affair a number of years ago, cheated on his wife. And as we were talking about it, he was reflecting on how God's grace had brought him out of that, and he had come into the light. And then he said something really profound. He said, and now I'm praying that God will give me the strength to share my story so that I can help other people who are cheated on or cheating. And wow. So we all have those too. We all have that stuff. Not just the stuff that's happened to us, but the stuff that we've done to others. That God can even use that. Okay, so here's how I was hoping to end. In light of just the discussion on eldership, I would love to just pray for the leaders of this church. And I think Andy's the only staff member in the room, but that's okay, because there's many other leaders among us, I know. But could we, Andy, could you come in the midst of us here, and then you can be our representative of the staff. But would you just pray, literally, some of these things from the first 3 verses over Andy, and let's maybe surround him, and then pray it for anyone who comes on your heart. I think it'd be great to pray for Danny, but any leaders here that you know of and love, just pray these blessings over them. And so, why don't we surround him and do that? So I'll just kind of get up and surround this guy.